261. 261. Jeremy, you lead us in prayer. 261. We'll sing the first and the last verses. I am thine, O Lord, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith, and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. There are depths of love that I cannot know till I cross the narrow sea. There are heights of joy that I may not reach till I rest in peace with thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, as we come together again to pray to you, be with us as we consider the sacrifice that Jesus made for us, and be with us that our praise to you is what you would have us to do, and help us to take anything we can gain out of the lesson tonight and apply it to our lives. And we thank you for all things you've given us. In Jesus' name we pray.
And yours is double what he paid when he yours is triple. All right. Look at these extras right here. All right. 1 Samuel chapter 19, 20. I've got 19 and 20. Did that last time, didn't I? That's all right. Y'all got to keep up with me. Keep me going. 1 Samuel chapter 20. All right. Verse number 1 says, And David fled from Naioth and Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, What have I done? What is mine iniquity? And what is my sin before thy father that he seeketh my life? He said unto him, God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he will shew it thee. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. David sware him over and said, Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he said, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death. And then said Jonathan to David, Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee. And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the third day at evening. And if thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me that he might run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. If he say thus, it is well, thy servant shall have peace. But if he be very wroth, then be sure that evil is determined by him. Therefore thou shalt deal kindly with thy servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be any iniquity, slay me thyself, for why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? Verse number 9. David, you want to read?
And Jonathan said, Far be it from thee, for if thou know certainly that the evil were determined by my father to come upon thee, then would not I tell it thee. Then said David to Jonathan, Who shall tell me, or what if thy father answer thee roughly? And Jonathan said to David, Come, let us go out to the field. And they went out both of them into the field. Jonathan said to David, O Lord God of Israel, when I was examining my father about tomorrow at any time on the third day, and behold, if there is 24 days, and I will then sin not to visit thee, and show it thee. The Lord do so, and much more to Jonathan. But if it pleases my father to do thee evil, then I will shoot thee, and send thee away, and thou mayest go in peace, the Lord be with thee. And he hath been with my father, as he hath been with my father. And thou shalt not only, while yet I live, show me kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but also thou shalt not cut off kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord had cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, Does the Lord even require it at the hand of David's enemies? And Jonathan caused David to swear to him, because he loved him, and he loved him as he loved his own soul. And Jonathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, thou shalt business was in him, and shall remain on the stone themselves. And also shoot 3 arrows on the side thereof, as though I shot at a mark. And behold, I will send a lad, saying, Go, find out the arrows. If I expressly say to the lad, Behold, the arrows are on this side of the Nathan, then come thou, for there is peace to thee, and no hurt will live. But if I say thus about the young man, Behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for the Lord has sent thee away. So the touch the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever.
So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. And the king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon his seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner set up Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something had befallen him. He is not clean, surely he is not clean. And it came to pass on the morrow, which was the 2nd day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, Wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to eat, neither yesterday nor today? And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. And he said, Let me go, I pray thee, for our family hath sacrificed in the city, and my brother he hath commanded me to be there. And now, if I have found favor in thine eyes, let me get away, I pray thee, and see my brethren, therefore he cometh not unto the king's table. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, Thou son of the perverse and rebellious woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and unto the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established for thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him to me, for he shall surely die.
And Jonathan answered Saul his father, and said unto him, Wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was the chariot of his father to slay David. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger, and did eat no meat the 2nd day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had done him shame. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and a little lad with him. And he said unto his lad, Run, find out now the arrows which I shoot. And as the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lad was come to the place of the arrow Jonathan had shot after the lad, and said, Is not the arrow beyond me? And Jonathan cried after the lad, Make speed, haste, stay not. And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came to his master. But the lad knew not anything. And when Jonathan and David knew the matter, and Jonathan gave his artillery unto his lad, and said unto him, Go, carry them to the city. And as soon as the lad was gone, David arose out of the place where he shot, and fell on his face to the ground, and bowed himself 3 times. And they kissed one another, and wept with one another, until David exceeded. And Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, for as much as we have sworn both of us in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever. And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city.
Very good, thank you. All right, question number 1. Why would David approach Jonathan questioning Saul's intentions towards him? Verse number 1. I guess you can see the answer right exactly in there, right? We have to deduce a little bit here. All right, Jonathan was closest to Saul as anybody else. He would have had most of the information that was going on there. And so that would be probably the best place to go, get the best information would be the one that's closest to the king, right? All right. Number 2, how confident was Jonathan in his response to David's question? Verse number 2. We don't have an exact word on this one either, but we can make some deductions on this based upon what is said in verse number 2.
Very confident. So he wouldn't make any decision, great or small.
All right. And you can look at what he said. God forbid. David comes to him and says, your daddy's trying to kill me. And he says, there's no way that can be happening. Kind of the idea behind it is the discussion right here is Jonathan should know what's going on, or it would seem like he should know what's going on, and they should be able to figure everything out. But sometimes when there's issues surrounding our lives, what's going on in our lives, we can try to get down to the bottom line of what is going on, and we still don't know exactly what the situation is. Jonathan thought he knew for sure. David wasn't sure, even though, well, he knew that Saul was trying to kill him because he'd already thrown a spear at him 2 times, and he'd come down to that city trying to kill him and sent 3 companies of soldiers to try to kill him. So he was confident that what he knew about Saul was true. Jonathan was there trying to deny it, and so David was having no part in it, even though Jonathan was sure that he was right about that. So we can see that there's a lot of confusion when it gets into details about what happens. There's a saying that I like to use when I hear of things that have happened to people, or people say that they had so-and-so, and I say there's always 2 sides to every story, and that's what we have to be very careful about. We may think that we know all the story because we've heard one side of it, and realistically there's more to it than just that. Any comments along those lines? Why would Saul withhold information concerning David from Jonathan? Verse number 3. Alright, so that was what David said. He thought that probably Saul knew that the relationship that Jonathan and David had was pretty tight, that they were friends and that sort of thing, and so he might have withheld that. Why else might he not have told Jonathan? Okay, so we can see that when he had told Jonathan before to go kill him in the previous chapter, he told Jonathan, and he told all his servants to kill David. And so that's why David had to run. And so Jonathan did not go out and do what Saul told him to do. And his wife, Saul's daughter, helped him escape. So not only was David saying that, and I think that may have been said a little bit in the jest of not wanting to offend or hurt Jonathan's feelings, but that he knew that Saul didn't tell him because he knew that Jonathan might protect that again, like they had done in previous times. Number 4, what plan was forged to determine Saul's intentions by David and Jonathan? Verses 5 through 7.
He wouldn't go to eat. He hide, get a table, and see what Saul was doing.
Okay, so they devised a plan, and actually in that plan, they were going to say that David had to go or was going to Bethlehem to be at a sacrifice with his parents, and that was the reason. We don't know, and probably that was not the exact, or wasn't true as far as that goes, and that kind of leads me to the idea of, they made up something to find out the truth about what the situation was. Is that how things are supposed to be done? No. Why didn't David just tell Jonathan, you go in there and you ask your daddy? Why didn't David tell Jonathan to go in there and ask his daddy Saul, why are you trying to kill? Are you trying to kill David? Instead, they made up this thing to try to figure out what the intention was. He hadn't, evidently he hadn't let on the whole story to him before, and so they were trying to figure out by that, and I believe that probably some of this was in the hands of God in that sense, because David laid out just exactly how this was supposed to transpire. He was going to act one way. If he wasn't, he was going to act another way. And so, that was a part of God's plan to let him know. This in no way we can determine that the Bible or that God does condone any kind of deceptive play on our parts. If we need to know something, we don't have to put together some kind of scheme in order to find out the truth. We just need to handle it in a straightforward, honest manner. But yet a lot of times people will make a play on words or do something to try to trick people into telling them what they want to know rather than just going straight at it. We need to be honest and forthright right in all of our dealings with people. The New Testament does say, provide things honest in the sight of all men. So we need to be careful that we don't play that game. Number 5, what did David call upon to get a commitment from Jonathan? Verse number 8. How did David pressure Jonathan to do what he wanted him to do? Right. They had made the covenant, and so what he did is he went back to that point where they had made the covenant earlier when Jonathan took his robe and his sword and gave all that stuff to David, and they made a covenant relationship, and now David is in a situation, and Jonathan doesn't think it's so, and he says, we've made this covenant, and you're actually the one that wanted to do it. And so now you're going to have to live up to your end of the bargain. We've made this covenant, you do it. And that should be something that we should always remember, is if we make a commitment, if we make an agreement with people, then we are going to be held accountable for that. Some people's word's not too good. Some people's covenant or contract is not good. And a lot of the reasons why we have so many things that have to be in writing now is because people cannot be trusted to their word or stick to the word. And I was thinking about it as far as contracts are concerned. When I first started in real estate, there was one piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, printed on one side, and that was the contract. Today, it's 10 pages, front and back. So, and they are getting to where it's dotting the I and crossing the T and making sure it's expressed out just exactly how it has to be. And that's true in any line of work, really. Now, if you have a business-to-business contract, you've got a whole team of lawyers on both sides. It used to be a handshake between the two presidents, and they did what they needed to do and went on. But David was emphasizing to Jonathan here, you made the commitment. You made it before the Lord, and so now you need to hold that up. No matter how your father acts, you need to go ahead and do what you've committed to do. And that should be a lesson for us as well. 6. What did Jonathan's statement, far be it from me, imply? What does that mean? Far be it from me. All right, so his word was good. I'll do exactly what I said I was going to do. And so, looking at the relationship that Jonathan and David had, I think in this whole chapter, it's a great chapter to talk about how brothers treat each other and what their commitment together is and how they look at that situation. And no matter what the circumstances may come upon them, they're still going to live up to the commitment that they've made. And that's what Jonathan is saying here. Far be it from me, it's so far out there that it's never going to happen. And so we have to be that kind of person. That's what Christianity is all about, and our commitment to Christ is one that, if it comes down to life or death, then I'm still going to make that choice that I need to make in order to live up to what I said I would do. Any comments along those lines? Number 7, to what extent do David and Jonathan commit to each other? Verses 12 through 14. Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I let's see. That's right. Yep. And Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow any time or the third day, and behold, if there be good toward David, I then sin not unto thee, and should thee. The Lord do so much more to Jonathan, but if it please my father to do evil, then I will shew thee and send thee away, that thou mayest go in peace, and the Lord be with thee, as he hath been with my father. And thou shalt not only while yet I live shew me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not. What was the level of the commitment that they were making to one another is kind of what I was trying to look at. Alright, so the commitment was made, and John is saying it's to the point of death in my life, but the commitment goes all the way through, and it's a commitment that we've made together that goes past into the next generation, or into the generation after that. We've made a commitment to our families, or our lineage, or whatever, in this situation here, so it was something that didn't die, or wouldn't die, with the death of one or the other of them. Do we have an illustration or an example of how this commitment worked out later on in years? Mephibosheth, when David became king, he asked who he could honor because of his relationship to Jonathan, and brought him into the royal palace, and he sat at the table with David, the king, and he took care of him all of his life, living up to that commitment that he had made to Jonathan. So he shows an example of what the level of commitment that a person should have who is a person of God. 8, describe the plan to disclose the information that Jonathan was to obtain. What did Jonathan say he was going to do? You go hide. When I get the information, I'll come back out here and I'll shoot the arrows. What did he say? He was okay if David could come in.
Go past. When you run away.
Okay.
If you're short, you're good to go when I'm back in.
Yeah. So, they had code words that only they knew. Let me ask you this. Where was Saul when they were getting together and talking like this? They were meeting together here close to the palace. They were walking around in the field right outside. Saul had just tried to kill him. Nobody knows where Saul was? Well, if we go back and we look at 19, David was in that part of Ramah, and Saul came down there, and what was he doing? He got naked and prophesied and all that sort of stuff. He was probably not back from his trip down there, because what happened is when he was doing all that prophesying all day and all night and all that was going on there, David escaped out of the window or out of the city and came back. And that's when he met with Jonathan. So Saul at that time probably was not in that location, and so they were. It was a pretty close time frame when all that took place. So Saul was probably not around to get David at that particular point. Number 9. What was the binding agency that held this commitment together? Verse number 23. What does 23 say there, Arnold?
What does that say thus? The young man behold the arrows are beyond it's 23, right?
Yes, sir.
It's touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of. Behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever.
And so what was the glue that made this whole situation stick together?
Love, I guess.
All right, it said the Lord be between you and me. It was God's their commitment to each other was based upon God and their faithfulness to God. It was, of course, you can say it was the love or the care that they had for each other, but their commitment was because they understood that they made the commitment to each other and that God saw that commitment, and therefore they had to live up to that, not because of what they said to each other, but because they had said it before God. And that's true with all our words and all the commitments that we make. It's not so much a binding agreement between each other, although that should have a great bearing on it. We want to be honest with people and we want to live up to our word in that respect and to treat people right and fairly. But when we give our word, we're giving it in the sight of God, and we're living up to what we commit to based upon the fact that we believe in God and believe in judgment, and that we're going to give an account for the things that we say in our lives.
Verse 13, going back to verse 13, that last part, and the Lord be with thee as he hath been my father. Jonathan, obviously, there's recognition here that Jonathan knew that David was appointed, or the next appointed by God in some way.
I believe that he did know that to some degree, to what measure he did understand it. And as we look at what happened as far as the reaction to Saul, to what Jonathan says and what he says to him, that even implies it more, that they both viewed that David was, and I think if I can remember back, I don't know what chapter it was, wasn't it Saul that said that, he was getting all this praise, and will he not have the kingdom as well? He knew pretty much that David was in a good light as far as being the next king. Anything else? Why didn't Saul question David's absence the first day of the feast? Verse number 26. Why didn't Saul question David's absence from the feast? The feast of the new moon was where everybody got together and they had a feast. It's recorded in a couple of chapters or a couple of verses in the Deuteronomy, I think is where it's mentioned, the new moon. But they got together on that occasion to celebrate a feast. And evidently it was a time that all the leaders or the royal family or military leaders or whatever, they got together at that time as well, because you see that Jonathan was there, Abner was there, David was there, Saul was there, and so all the people of power were at this particular meeting of the new moon. And so it was expected of them to be there. David understood that. Jonathan knew that it was expected of him. But then Saul didn't ask anything about his not being there the first day. Why not? All right. Ceremonial unclean, touching a dead animal, something to that effect, we don't know. But he gave him the benefit of the doubt on that. But he had to make an appearance. He had to be a part of that. And so on the second day, Saul questioned what the situation was then. Let's see, what's verse number 29 question is, what was used to make the excuse of David's absence so powerful, or to seem powerful? What was the reason David didn't go? What was the reason that Jonathan gave that David didn't go? All right, there was going to be a sacrifice, something religious in nature. Also, it said that his brother commanded him to come. So what he was trying to say is, I had no choice. I had to do this. This was my responsibility, so please excuse me. And we can use that about any time we want to. If we don't want to do something, we want to make an excuse, we can add a little bit on there to make it sound like something's more important than what it is as far as what we're taking care of, rather than doing what we need to be doing or being where we need to be. Number 12, how did Saul respond to Jonathan's excuse for David? 30 and 31. All right. You don't read that for us, Trey?
Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, Thou son of the virtuous woman, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse unto thine own confusion, but that to the confusion of thy mother's nakedness. For as long as the son of Jesse is upon the ground, thou shalt not be established for thy kingdom. Wherefore thou shalt fetch me unto him, for he shall surely die.
Very good. All right, so he got angry, and what did he do? Well, we know he's cast his javelin at him. Before he did that, talk bad about who? Talk bad about his mama. You want to make somebody mad? Talk bad about your mama, right? That was kind of the idea. You see, well, you're dumb as your mama. You're shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak, or whatever. You should not have better sense than this. And so, he was just beside himself because he understood what was going on. Did Jonathan understand what was going on? As far as what was going on with David and what was happening? Yeah. Oh, yeah. David, he was fully aware of the fact of what had happened because of what Saul had done. Back in the chapters where we looked at as far as his rebellion against God and offered sacrifice and failing to completely destroy the Amalekites, he knew that his father had broken the law as far as what God had laid down for him to do. He knew that the kingdom had been taken from him. He knew all this stuff, which meant that he was not going to be able to be the king. And he had the spirit, a spirit that was not resentful or fighting against it, but he went on and lived his life and did what he could do to sustain and help his father, but also to sustain and help David, which, is put him right in the middle of a difficult situation, basically what it's amounted to, yet he handled it very confidently and graciously, I guess would be a good word to describe it. All right, number 13. Can we learn anything from Saul's reaction when Jonathan questioned him? Verse number 33. Everybody knew to stay away from Saul. What you say, Trina? Yeah. He's got the javelin. Everybody did for coming.
He knew that his son would not be king. He chose David. So he's not going to be the heir to the throne.
All right. The thing that Jonathan did, though, was when Saul got all upset and called him all this stuff, and called his mother all this stuff, and told him he was going to be a loser because he was not doing what Saul thought he ought to do. Jonathan asked him a question. Why? What has he done? Talking about trying to kill David. He was questioning Saul's motives for doing what he wanted to do. He was pointing out that he was wrong in what he wanted to do. And so what did Saul do? Tried to pin him to the wall with a javelin. So, I think that we can learn a little bit from this, and that's what I was trying to see, is when you question people for doing something that they know is wrong, what can you expect? The javelin? Yeah, and that's the point. Saul didn't step back and say, well, I need to think about this, and you're probably right, or he said, you yada. That's the way people react. When they want to do what they want to do, how are they going to react? Throw something. Maybe not literally, but they're going to throw something. And that's always going to be the case. So when you stand up for what's right, or you try to point out to people according to what God's Word says and what is right there, a lot of times you're going to get that. Sometimes people will have a tender heart, and some people will want to know the truth and will respond to it. But we can expect that when we stand up for what's right, people are not going to take it in the best spirit and handle it in the right way. Anybody on that? 14. What were Jonathan's 2 reactions to Saul's actions? Verse number 34. All right, yeah, it says he was angry and he was grieved. All right, or sorry. Why was he angry? Well, why was Jonathan angry? All right. Yeah, I would be a little upset. What'd you say, Roy?
He was Jonathan's friend, and he wanted to be right.
Okay, he was angry because of what his daddy was trying to do to David. Yeah, he was upset about that. He knew that he was innocent, and that Saul was wrong, and so that upset him. Then it says that he was grieved or sorrowful. So he had 2 emotions that were involved in this. One was anger and one was sorrow. And so we can learn a lot from this as far as the things that we deal with in life. What's going to happen when we see things that are not being done right or things that are wrong, and we try to fix the problem or try to help show what needs to be done to fix the problem, then that doesn't turn out the way that we want it to turn out, then how are we going to feel about it? Are we just going to go on our merry way? It's not going to bother us at all, and we just, go on and do what we're going to do. We can expect that when we try to do what's right, when we try to live before people, we try to help people to understand the truth and to do the right thing, that when they don't like it, they're going to respond in a way that's bitter and hateful and angry. And it's going to cause in us some form of reaction in our hearts and our feelings. One's going to be anger, and the other's going to be sorrow. That's a part of life, and that's something that we have to deal with in our lives. How do we do that? If we were Jonathan, if we were in a situation like that, how would we handle it as far as our anger is concerned, as far as our sorrow is concerned, because it didn't turn out the way that we wanted it to turn out? What do we do?
I think here with this case for Jonathan is similar to many other cases that in that moment of the event occurring, his initial emotion is anger. Then it turns to grief because looking to the future, he knows the actions that he's going to have to take or the actions that are going to unfold, and that's going to be difficult. Things are going to be bad and tough, and you've got to do the right thing. It's not going to be easy. It's going to cause sorrow and grief on your heart because of the actions you got to take. So the sorrow is knowing what's coming, what you're going to have to endure.
Anybody else? All right, number 15. How did David act toward Jonathan when he came out of hiding? Verse number 41. What did he do?
With gratitude, love, and sorrow.
How was it expressed in verse 41? What did he do first when he first came out? I bowed down. Yeah, 3 times. All right, so he humbled himself before Jonathan. Jonathan lived up to his end of the bargain. Jonathan was still the son of the king. David's life was basically in Jonathan's hand, and he acknowledged that he was Jonathan deserved the respect and honor because of all these things as well. Then you look at some other things that, as far as their crying and hugging and that sort of thing, we can truly see what a friendship they truly had and what was being destroyed there because of Jonathan. And that kind of leads into that last question I had right there. It's number 16. How many things were destroyed by Saul's rejection of God? We've had a picture now of Saul for 5 or 6 chapters here. And you see Saul being made king, given responsibility. He rejects God. What all is is being destroyed now because of Saul's rejection of God.
God rejected Saul.
All right? His relationship with God, that would be one. What happened with him and Samuel? It says when after the Amalekites, Samuel saw him no more. He destroyed that relationship because of his rejection of God. What happened with the kingdom? Right? His relationship or the things that God had given him were destroyed. Now we look right here. Jonathan and David's friendship was destroyed. I don't know. I was trying to think, did David and Jonathan ever see each other again after this time? I don't know. That's what I'm asking. I didn't go and research it, but I don't know at the time. I don't remember that they did. They may have that one more time. We just have to look it up. But the point being is, because of Saul's rejection of God, there's a whole line or a list of things that were destroyed by that. And many times we just look at one particular part or aspect of it and think that that's the end of it. That there's such a when people go away from God, when people leave God, there's just a trail of destruction, because that's the way that the devil operates. The devil is out to destroy everything. He doesn't want anything good in life. He wants to destroy nations. He wants to destroy churches. He wants to destroy families. He wants to destroy individuals. And when somebody joins forces with him, so to speak, in the sense of like rejecting God, like Saul did, then the devil has a heyday as far as getting into people's lives and what's going on. Any questions or comments? Okay. That gets us to the end. We'll go on to chapter 21 next time around. I think singing is actually next week. So. Everybody in? Got a song? 380. 380 will be our hymn of invitation here in just a minute. 380. Anybody need to make us aware of any announcements that need to be made?
My sister said a procedure on Friday.
Okay. Friday morning?
I'm very tired.
All right. Well, let's keep Glenda in our prayers. That particular test. Where are you having it done, Glenda? Vanderbilt. Did you get it? All right. Bobby, okay?
He's not feeling very well tonight, but he did start his new medication today, so I'll see in a few weeks or what.
I talked to him Sunday. He said there was a lot of confusion on getting the medication, but I got that's
finally there.
good. We're glad it's here, and we're glad that he's able to get that. Pray that it helps quickly. Others?
Eric's in Texas.
Eric's traveling the world, having a good time. It's fast time. Others? Anything else? We got we've got a business meeting this coming Lord's Day, and the congregation will make the time for that. We appreciate it. The 19th, we're planning on getting together with the young people. We need to start making some arrangements on that. And then the 27th, we'll have our adjusted services, the fellowship meal. I think that's all we've got on the docket for right now. Lord willing, we will be getting together Sunday morning for Bible study at 9:30 and worship at 10:30. Hope you can be here for that. Bring a friend if you can. We're going to continue in fundamental February, dealing with some of the fundamentals of Christianity. Others on our prayer list, we want to continue to remember Sister Edna and Sister Sue and Brother Ronnie. want to remember Logan Hall and Braxton Allen, Bill Johnson. We want to remember Betty Jo Hartley. She's got some stuff coming up this week too, doesn't she?
Possibly start her radiation.
All right, so she's getting radiation treatments here pretty soon. Amy Howe, who is the daughter of the bookkeeper at Woodall Elementary, she's the one that we announced Sunday morning who has leukemia, and it has gone into her bones, so it's not a good situation at all right there. Good to see Jeremy's feeling better. I also want to remember Rachel Dixon's father, Mr. Clark. He had a bypass or had a blockage and had it fixed and is at home recovering from that. Is there anyone else that I've overlooked? All right. Number 380 will be our hymn of invitation. Just in reading 1 Samuel chapter 20, there was a passage of scripture that I've heard sermons about that it just stuck out to me, or sermons from. So the question came to my mind, what keeps me faithful to God, or what draws me closer to God in my life? The passage of scripture that I'm going to refer to here is found in 1 Samuel chapter 20 and verse 3. And that's the discussion that David and Jonathan are having together about the situation of him being in jeopardy and Saul trying to kill him. And David's response to Jonathan when he said, "No, that's not possible." David said, "Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes." And he says, "Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between thee and death." But a step between me and death. What keeps me close to God? What keeps me faithful in my life? For David, on this occasion, it was the very fact that he was that close to dying. He knew how close he was. But the realistic view of David was that this was not the first time. If you look back at the history of what we've talked about as far as David is concerned throughout all this, you go back to the lion and the bear, you go back to Goliath, you go back to the fighting the Philistines and all these wars. David constantly had death right in front of him. That was a part of his life forever. And even after he had committed the sin with Bathsheba, God said, "You're going to constantly be fighting men. You're going to have your life at risk all the time." It was in his family. It was nations about him. Absalom tried to kill him. David knew that death was at his doorstep at all times. How aware are we of the fact that death is at our doorstep at all times? Most of the world tries to ignore it or tries to avoid thinking about that. And so what happens? If there's something wrong in their life, if they've got sin in their lives, they've got time. Death is not here. I can fix it tomorrow or when I get a little older or later on. And so they're not drawn to God because they don't see the imminent danger that stays right there with us throughout life. Life is very precarious at best. And we need to keep that in our hearts and minds and use that to help us be motivated to do whatever we need to do so that we're prepared should it come and when it does come. Most people don't look at it that way. They don't want to think about it. They try to avoid it. And so when they know that they should do something about their soul, they just don't do it. They know what they need to do to become a Christian. They won't do it because they've got time. They know what they need to do about their soul because they've sinned against the Lord. But they're not willing to do it because they've got time. Is that the case with some of us tonight? I certainly hope not. I hope that we understand that we are where we are and that only by the grace of God do we stand here today. And if He blesses us, we'll be able to do it again tomorrow. But we need to be sure that we're ready. You know why David was able to hold on and be close to God? 23rd Psalm says it. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord. David could be strong in his life because no matter what he faced in life, the Lord was with him. Is the Lord with you tonight? If you need to make a correction so that He will be, I hope that you will. While together we stand and while we sing.
Just as I am without one thing, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou didst belong to thee, O Lamb of God, I come. Just as I am, has broken every barrier now to thee, God, yea, thine alone, O Lamb of God, I come.
David, please pray.
For God, our Father, David, we give you now thank you for the time we've had together to study portions of the Word. God, I ask you to be with each one of us that's represented here as we go back to our homes this evening, get kind of safely. We're also mindful of those who mentioned, those that are battling sicknesses and diseases, those that are having to test done, and make sure you do all of those, Father, be with those who minister to them. Do thy will. Help us to do and say the things